Welcome to the Local Marketing Source Weekly Update, brought to you by localmarketingsource.com.
This week's Local Marketing Update is brought to you by Scott Gallagher. Scott is the co-founder of Local Marketing Source and has become the recognized expert in providing online marketing services to local businesses. Follow Scott on Twitter @ScottGallagher5 and on Facebook.com/ScottPGallagher.
All right, guys, everyone, Scott Gallagher here with Local Marketing Source, bringing you our weekly local marketing industry update. Now, live on the call today, this is the first time that we've done this. We just had a public webinar this afternoon, so I went ahead and invited some public audience to be able to listen to this call live. So I'd like to welcome everybody else on the line and get a little bit of a flavor for these calls, just to let you know. I still see I got some more people coming on the line, but once a week we do these calls. They're typically this time of week on Wednesday or Thursday at 4 p.m. Central or Eastern time. I'm in Central time, so it's 3 o'clock my time. I'm located just outside of Chicago, and we have a format to them where I will share with you the overview, the update of what we're going to be talking about. We'll have anywhere from 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different things that have changed in the last week and what's going on to keep up to date. We'll also get into a local business tip and a local agency tip. In some cases, we'll talk about what's going on inside the member Facebook group and some of the things that are also working and we're utilizing and doing in my agency. So on that note, I also have some housekeeping items to share. I have a cheat sheet for LMS students to be able to download. I'll share that link with you. It's right now we've got the documentation for the public audience, and then of course if you were an LMS student and you listened to the Google My Business webinar yesterday, you would have realized that we got into greater detail than with content rather than what we discussed today during the webinar. So anybody that's listening to this, whether you're an active LMS student or not, make sure you seek out the content and listen into the Google My Business webinar. There's not really a lot of changes. Nothing's really changed with our strategy. The webinar is just reconfirming some of the stuff that we talk about and teach about in terms of execution and the 3 pillars of local search, but you also want to take a look at the interface. And Google My Business really is it's the first final step of where Google has been trying to get to for quite some time. So this week, before I get going, one last housekeeping item for anybody that's on the line as well. We use GoToWebinar software. You can raise your hand and I will answer your questions at the end of the call, or you can type your questions into the question box and I will answer them as well. I like to take priority over people that are willing to speak with me. Of course, the reason being that tonality evokes a very different sense of communication than just words typed out. And get a better understanding. But this week for an overview, we're going to talk about just some of the promotion of Google My Business and talk a little bit about aspects of Google My Business and how big of a deal it is for Google that they put it right on their front page. Google has also entered into the business of selling domains and what that means for small businesses and how that may affect your agency, as well as an opportunity to create some additional revenue for your agency. And finally, authorship is back in the news and discussion for that. We know that authorship on websites, by adding the authorship rich snippet HTML markup, has definitely helped with ranking, but it vastly improved click-through rates, and so there's been some changes to that. We're going to talk about that. And if you're in the webinar today, you had a little bit of an overview on virtual tours, but that is also going to be the local business tip this week for local business owners and agency owners. Now, I'll get into that. If you haven't been into the Facebook group lately, please get in. It has been rocking and rolling in the last couple of weeks. We've had quite a few members come in the last couple of weeks introducing themselves. We've got some discussions going on about some of the tools that are being used for both ranking and identifying citations and discussions about that, as well as a good discussion regarding conversion. And finally, one more discussion regarding video for small business and some dialogue around that. So absolutely make sure to get in there. If you're an LMS student and not a part of the group, make sure you send an email to support at Local Marketing Source with your LMS username and email address, and we will get you added to that group. Make sure you follow that group, and if you're like me, you're on Facebook almost every day, so you're able to see all of that in your stream. And finally, when we're talking about what's working right now in my agency, I'm going to be talking about these virtual tours. This is a change that we're making across the board for all existing clients, and it is something that is going to help improve conversion and ranking, because the search engines tend to like that. So on that note, do I go down the path of talking about the weekly updates or the local business tip? Well, let's get into some of the updates, because they're not all that exciting this week. Every week, sometimes we'll have nothing. Other weeks, we'll be on the phone for an hour. I try to keep these calls to 30 minutes once a week, but I'm not going to reduce the time of the call because questions are coming in or because we've got a lot of content to cover. Also understand that these calls are also available and recorded on MP3 and available in the LMS portal that you can download at any point in time. Also available on podcasts, so you can stream it while driving, which some people do. All right, so weekly update. You know, this Google My Business thing has been in the news, or at least the SEO news, since June 11th. So we're, a couple of weeks into it now, and there's been a lot of talk about it, and oh my God, all these changes, and the SEO community is discussing changes that, you should be changing your strategy. There's nothing at Local Marketing Source that our strategy has changed at all. To us, this is really not a big change. It's just a matter of bringing all the pieces together, which, is social and analytics and citations and reviews, and your business exposure, and really it just paints a better picture that SEO and what local businesses should be doing is effective marketing, as opposed to certain strategies that may or may not exist. Now, you see, one thing I like to do is really understand companies. And I read about the history of companies right down to personal levels on how the executives built relationships. And when we take Google as a company, there's really a lot that you can continually read into the organization just based off of the social dynamics of the internal operations of Google. And for example, the three people at the top, Eric Schmidt and Larry Page and Sergey Brin, have all changed dynamics over the years in different positions, and depending on what they're doing and talking about, we can get a real understanding. And for example, when Larry took over the helm, took back over the helm of Google 3 years ago, his biggest push was to transform Google into a social organization. And he established company bonuses, employee bonuses, based off of the company's performance in social. In other words, it was across the board. Well, that leads us to question, why was it so important for Google to have a social network? Most people thought that they were going to try to compete against Facebook. And right from the get-go, I knew damn well that there was no potential way that Google was even going to come close to competing with Facebook. There was their third attempt at creating a social network, and what's to say that the third time around is going to be any different? Although, and albeit that most internet users have a Google account, Google Plus was merely created to generate social signals. Now understand what the algorithm has done. The algorithm, in terms of links, we all put on our scientific hats and go out and all go try to get a bunch of links. But really what the search engines are doing is just trying to mimic human behavior and just trying to identify what human beings are doing to evaluate the effectiveness of a piece of content. Well, this there's a story that we could go all the way back to 1996, even before Google Incorporated was a business. And I like to tell this story from time to time, and how Larry Page and Sergey were in their second and third year respectively and working on a thesis, and they utilized one of their dorm rooms as a server room for this Google bot that they created. And essentially, they just wanted to organize the world of its information. And the idea of the Google algorithm initially spawned from one of its founders, Larry. And Larry one day was looking at his father, and his father was a scientist, and his father would write these articles, and these articles would get published, and the more times that his articles would get published, his authority as a scientist would go up. Now, if these republished articles then get cited by by a fourth party, his authority would then fall down to the third party, and then of course him as the original writer, and his authority would go up. Well, when you look at that, and if you drew that out on a whiteboard, what you're looking at is a website with links. In other words, they viewed links as a vote for a website. The more votes a website had, the better it would be. But all votes aren't equal. And so they started throwing in different factors to measure the effectiveness of each of these votes, the equality of these votes. Now, I just said on my webinar, some SEO strategies utilizing article marketing and spinning software and auto distribution of articles. It's not hard to get 2,000 links. I mean, I could sneeze at a couple thousand links any day. But I would take one link over 2,000 links if that one link had value. And that would be, for example, a press release that is distributed and published by the local newspaper. Well, press release or PR marketing has existed for decades. It's just an old school traditional marketing strategy that works when done properly. But like any other strategy that exists, when it's not done properly, it's a waste of time. And so this idea, getting back to Google Plus and understanding social signals, at that point in time, it was the point in time in the internet that links weren't just the only methodology to determine popularity of content. Well, how many times a piece of content is shared, or how many times a piece of content is liked, are two other potential major metrics to measure the quality of content. And those were the fundamental reasons why Google needed Google Plus, is that they need to identify these social signals. And without it, Facebook, with its social graph, ultimately holds the key to these social signals and is in bed with Bing. So the long-term strategy, Google absolutely needed this. It was very important that Larry came in the helm. Now, about 6 weeks ago, maybe not even 6 weeks ago, maybe it was 3 or 4, he openly admitted that his push towards Google Plus was a mistake. Now, Google Plus has recently made some changes, and they launched in our world Google My Business as the brand of it. Well, what changed with all of that was that Google Plus is no longer a standalone product on its own. It's a component and a piece of the Google family of apps. And of the Google family of apps, there's many apps that are important and relevant for local businesses, such as insight data, understanding your social insights, or analytical data and understanding your traffic that comes to your site, or conversions of that particular traffic, or understanding reviews, or where your service areas are, or managing your company information. All of this has come under the hood of Google My Business. And for the first time in the local world, we have seen this advertised on Google's front page, their home page. It's the #1 site page on the internet, is google.com. So that was vast and great exposure to see that. And by seeing that, and when Google makes a change on their home page, they are so particular about every single little pixel that goes on to that front page. Did you know that about 6 weeks ago they changed their logo? And I stared at both of them back and forth, and I couldn't find the differences until I had to read about it. Google made headline news in mainstream media because they updated their logo. Guys, you know what they did to their logo? They moved the G and the L. the second G and the first L, they moved both of those letters over to the right by 1 pixel. 1 pixel, they moved it. You can't see the change. And that change was so significant at Google that it made mainstream news. Anything that they put on their front page is a big deal, and we know that it's a massive undertaking at Google. And for the first time in the local world, we saw local aspects being advertised. So to me, yes, it's newsworthy content that Google was asking businesses to get listed on Google right on their front page, because that tells me a lot of what's going on internally in that organization and what's important to them. And if we can understand what's important to them, then we can understand what's important for businesses. Well, it just happens that even when we follow that strategy, we're just reverse engineering good marketing. All right, so Google, another thing here, Google enters the domain reselling business. A domain name, www.businessname.com, that's your URL. And you can go and buy these URLs at Google now. Of course, Google in its traditional form is only allowing invitees to be able to buy these domain names. There's no price available, but there's images floating around the internet that is going to be around $12, the domain name. A little more expensive than GoDaddy. But what does this mean? It all starts with a URL. Everything is attached to a URL. You can privatize the URL for about $5-6 a month through GoDaddy. Well, Google is offering privatization for free. In other words, all URLs essentially are no longer going to have public data to it. But what does that mean? When you hold that information, you'll hold the big picture of everything. I don't think that Google is getting into the business of reselling URLs to make a profit. I don't think that's the business they're trying to get into. I think they're getting into that business to be able to have further control of the internet and further control of certain data. Because guess what? URL purchases leads to hosting. Hosting leads to full control. When you've got that, you're able to dictate what's integrated and what's not integrated. Google as a whole, with all of its products and the launch of all of this, I think it's not a coincidence that this is all happening at the same time. We're probably going to see a couple more triggers pulled in the next couple of weeks, some big announcements for Google. And in Google's fashion, all of this happened very, very quietly. It is getting a little bit of news in the SEO community. I think it should be mainstream news, and I think there's a lot more going on under the wire than what's perceived to be going on with these changes. Do I like it? Not really. I don't think a business should have that much control. We look at the deregulation, what's happened in history in both Canada and the United States about the deregulations of services and whatnot. I'm using the wrong analogy to go down a path to prove my point here. But the point is still the matter that when, for example, electricity became deregulated, they said it would drive prices down, and in turn, prices were not, and choices were not essentially changed. Google, in that sense, is gaining a lot of control, like a government would, and whatnot. And albeit it works in some scenarios, such as a country like Canada, socialization does work. In other cases, it doesn't support capitalism, and it doesn't support competition. And competition is what drives service up and prices down. Google has never been a company that has been able to have a good customer support aspect. And my fear is that you start removing some of this control, that businesses are not going to be able to get the job done, and we'll see how that pans out. All right, and lastly here, authorship. If you don't know what authorship is there's an HTML is code, obviously, for websites, and there's a certain HTML code that we can wrap around specific content, and we call these rich snippets. It's a markup language, and There's different types of rich snippets that are available to utilize for a local business. For example, the H review rich snippet is a way to wrap a review and tell a search engine that it's a legitimate review, and websites should be seeing that. Or the H card for address. All addresses should be wrapped with the H card HTML rich snippet markup. Another one is authorship and publishership. Authorship is, for example, if a blog post is written, we're attaching an author, and not just author information, but author profile information. In other words, Google Plus information, and tying it to the piece of content written. And that has given search engines greater authority towards content. As an author creates more content, and as an author is liked on content piece number 1 and content piece number 2, well, it's only going to help the authority for content piece number 3 if it's wrapped with an authorship. Well, Google, in its search engine results, was showing a snippet of information for a search result that had authorship and showed the picture of the author. I knew that this could not last. There was a point in time, not that long ago, after authorship had been implemented for an entire year, that only 6% of websites had authorship listings, but 30% of results were sites that had authorship. Well, when I heard that statistic a couple of months ago, I realized that there was a massive disconnect. Google can't operate its algorithm with 6% of websites that have something. In other words, that value is going to drop. If that value is going to drop, what's going to happen with sites that do have it? They're not going to gain the benefit. Well, you put that little image in a SERP, it is vastly improving the click-through rate. If you had a site that was ranked in spot number 2, it was outperforming spot number 1 that didn't have the authorship in it, just because of click-through rates on it. Well, Google was giving this priority to 6% of websites. Click-through rates were going through the roof. That can't last. So the news is Google dropped profile photos out of authorship in its search results. Not surprisingly. I'm not saying don't do it, because it still gives authority to content and it gives authority to a site as a whole, but we're not able to capitalize off of those click-through rates. All right, so that comes to the conclusion of this week's update. Well, no, not the conclusion yet. I got to talk about the business tip, and just wanted to go through some virtual tours. I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop here, guys, for a moment. Just let me turn off all the porn sites and all that, and then I'll go share my desktop. I just wanted to show you a little bit here about what virtual tours are. If you're inside, that's where you can take and you can move around. You can scroll around the inside of a building, a 360-degree view. Okay. You can go do searches, and you can hire somebody. You can hire a photographer to do this for your clients. Your cost is going to be about $350, or you can do it yourself. You can do it with Android phones. Android phones has panoramic views built in. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for a 360-degree panoramic view. All right. Now, to do this, it's real simple. You just need to get something called photo stitching software. Use your favorite photo stitching software. I would imagine there's free photo stitching software available on the internet, but I utilize Photoshop. So I'm just going to open up Photoshop here, and we're actually going to go through the process. I went out earlier today and took some pictures of the outside of my office. We're located in Algonquin, Illinois. So to do this, you just open up Photoshop. I have Photoshop open here. I'm going to go to Automate and go to Photo Merge. It opens this up here. I'm going to bring in all the files that I took. Now, when you're taking these files, I want to show you something with these files when you want to take these files. Where am I? My little thing isn't showing. Hang on. There we go. I just took it right off my camera. So I don't know. I took about 10 different pictures. This is the right angle view of the river, our little bridge. If you guys saw some of the news yesterday, we had choppers out here, and this whole bridge area up here was closed down, fire trucks and whatnot, because there's actually a dam right here and a 2 or 3 foot drop, and somebody was bringing their boat to come for lunch over here to Port Edwards, and their engine stalled and went over the dam. But anyhow, here's the pictures that I took. I hit the wrong button. You're going to see. So the first one you take, now I move the camera on a tripod 40 degrees. Another 40 degrees. Why is everything so slow? Another 40 degrees. So you're taking a picture every 40 degrees or so. You want about a 40-degree overlap. You also prefer to put everything on a tripod. You'll also, if you're taking pictures inside and you're using a flash, use a flash for all of your images. Once you're in Photoshop, you just come and find these photos. Where are they? They're in here. We'll go and get these 1 second, 6, 7. So I got all my, in this case, 180-degree view. Bring in all my files, and then I just hit OK. And Photoshop is going to do its thing, and it's now stitching all the different photographs together. And I think I have the saved image that I'm going to open up. It takes about 3 or 4 minutes. I don't know why my computer is running the way it is. I mean, I've got a Mac, an i7. I got a quad-core processor in it, 16 gigs of RAM, and I don't like how it runs. So while that's running, I'm going to go ahead and open the floor to any discussions, any questions that we may have. And I don't see that anybody has their hand up, but I'll go see in the question box. What does George have to say here? When you get a referral for a client through a referral marketing strategy implementation, is that one customer-provided referral able automatically to be shared on all different social channels? Google+, Facebook, Yelp, etc. What are you asking here? Oh, okay. No, the answer is no. Now, when we have our review acquisition strategy, what we do is we create a business card or a postcard. If you're an LMS student, you can go and download the Photoshop files for this or the JPEGs, and then send them to a printer and get them printed on some heavy stock. And we print on the cards that say, hey, thank you for your business and thank you for saying good things about us. If you'd like to leave a review, go to this web address. And we also put a little QR code on there that they can scan with their smartphone. And when they scan it with their smartphone, chances are they're already signed in to Google. We will randomize these QR codes. So we'll send them to Google sometimes. Sometimes we'll have them sent to Yelp. Other times Yahoo or Bing. And that allows a distribution. For somebody to leave one review and have it populate all of these sites, they would all have to have agreements. And trust me, Google does not get along well with its competition. Mark is asking, will Google use your panoramic views for Google My Business? Sorry, I missed yesterday's webinar. Yeah, that's what we're showing here, essentially for that purpose. And you will see my panoramic view. It's running super slow right now. I don't know why this machine is running the way it is, but it's still in the process. You can see here how it's stitching different images together. In a few minutes, you're going to see the final output, and that would be the image that you would upload. And that's essentially what we're looking for. Now, the reason why you'll want to do this, guys, is one of the videos that we've always talked about is an office walkthrough. Well, this is just making an office walkthrough better. It's important. It's important to consumers. It helps improve conversion. It's a major factor that consumers are looking for. Because of those reasons, Google puts priority to it, and it does influence ranking. Sites that have a better user experience are going to be the sites that have a greater propensity to be shown by the search engines, and this enhances the user experience. It is a best practice. It is a minimum requirement that all of our clients are eventually going to require. I hope that helps a little bit, Mark. That webinar was recorded, so you will get access to it. George is asking, could you further explain how you use the client's email address of marketing@clientabc.com to gain access with the permission to Google Analytics and G+? Well, George, the specific steps for it, I could not tell you. Google tends to change those from time to time. I haven't gone through that process myself in probably at least 6 months. Now, what you have is a Google account. And a Google account allows you to access all of Google's products with one particular account. In that account settings, it doesn't matter if you're dealing with the account settings in Google Plus or whatnot, but you want to get into the profile account settings. And inside the profile account settings, you can add additional addresses, email addresses to that account, because every Google account has a Gmail account, right? Something at gmail.com. Well, you're going to add another address to it, and then it's going to go through the verification process to verify that you have access to that email address. And once you verify that, you can now log in with the second email address, and that would be marketing@companyname.com. All right, so I'm going to show my desktop one more time here, guys. You can see here that this is the panoramic image now of the river that we took this morning. It's a 180-degree view that you can see that's going on. Sounds like our neighbor just came in. You may hear the dogs or whatnot. And then you would just save this image. Now, in this case here, I did not have a tripod, even though I said use a tripod, and that's why you're seeing some variances. And so if you don't have a tripod, you would just go ahead and crop that image and save it. And you're done.
For watching the local marketing industry update. We've got these things coming out every single week. So if you liked with what you heard, just click the button right above me right here to subscribe to our channel. If you'd like to get a little bit more, right over here, go check out localmarketingsource.com. We've got free reports that you can grab. You can even register for a free marketing course to get in and see the portal. Or just go ahead and follow us on some of the social channels. We'll be around. Until next time.